Monday. It is the final day of Black History Month 2022. It is a pleasure to bring together this collaborative effort between some amazing partners at the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, the Chicago Urban League, and Chicago State University to close out this month's effort, bringing you the findings that we've gathered from the statewide Illinois Black Business Survey. We have an amazing panel. We have some great feedback to share from the very intensive effort that we engaged in to close out 2021 and hear specifically from the Black business community in Illinois. Just a little bit of a recap on what we did with the survey. The partners in Chicago State University and Chicago Urban League came together with the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, intending to hear firsthand information from the Black business community of the state of Illinois, with the intention to work to uncover unique challenges, understand what experiences were had with the COVID-19 pandemic and above and beyond that unique situation, and find ways that we can better provide support, intervene with solutions, and make the state of Illinois a place where Black businesses can thrive. It was the first of its kind effort where a higher education institution, historic civil rights organization, and a state economic development agency collaborated in such an effort. And we are very proud to have worked hard to hear from the business community. And we are honored that over 1,100 businesses responded to our call for information. Specifically, it was 1,163 businesses shared their feedback and their perspective with us. So we're very excited now, having closed the survey response window. The team has worked to identify themes and priorities from that survey, and some really powerful insights that we want to use now to inform our strategic efforts and make sure we're being smart about the way we connect with Black businesses, provide support, and make the state a place where Black business can thrive. So the whole survey initiative is a first step in our intentions to listen and connect with the Black business community to make sure everything that needs to be in place is available. And we're working collaboratively to ensure that the business can grow right here in Illinois. That's a little bit of background on the Black Business Survey Initiative. I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Matt Simpson. I am the African American Business Development Manager in the Illinois Office of Minority Economic Empowerment. Our office works to support minorities, veterans, women, and individuals with disabilities who are operating businesses here in the state of Illinois. We do that by doing targeted outreach, by helping to build capacity and remove barriers, and being an advocate in empowering businesses with information. And with that, I want to pass the microphone to Director Sylvia Garcia, who is the Director of the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate that introduction, and just really appreciate you and all the work that you do. Matt has worked tirelessly on this initiative and so many others to make sure that we're doing everything we can in the state of Illinois to make sure Black businesses are thriving. So thank you, Matt. As Matt mentioned, my name is Sylvia Garcia, and I'm the Acting Director of the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, or as we like to call it, DCEO. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today, along with our partners at Chicago State University, Chicago Urban League, and just folks across the board who have really helped us with this Black Business Survey. Today is our first opportunity to learn a little bit more about what the results of the survey look like, and then we'll be continuing to do some additional work over the forthcoming weeks and months where we really roll out how we're able to respond to some of the things that we heard in the survey. On behalf of Governor Pritzker, I'm very happy to be here as we celebrate Black History Month. We close out the day today, or close out the month today, as Matt was saying, and it's really important to me that we really emphasize that we're just getting started. on the work that we do here, and that while Black History Month is just 1 month, we're doing this work every day of the year. It's really important that we focus on the Black businesses and the important role that they play in the Illinois economy. We know small businesses are the backbone of our economy and are the lifeblood of so many communities. They're what make communities truly unique and special across the state of Illinois. And we know that Illinois' 132,000 Black-owned businesses are essential to the strength of our communities, but also our fiscal health and our economic health overall. We know that there have been a number of obstacles for folks across the board related to COVID-19, but that Black-owned businesses have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, and some of the barriers and obstacles that existed before the pandemic have been exacerbated over the last 2 years. That's why, as part of the Pritzker administration, we put equity at the forefront of the work that we're doing and making sure we're addressing systemic barriers that have limited Black and brown business growth in the past, and hoping to alleviate that in the future. That's why in some of our economic response programs, like the Back to Business program and others, we've tried to put equity at the forefront and mobilize the funds we have to help the hardest hit businesses and the hardest hit communities across the state of Illinois. We've been doing that work with our small business development centers. We have 42 of those across the state and over 100 community navigators, which really help meet folks where they are and provide assistance when folks need it most. It's really critical that the work that we're doing helps all Illinoisans prosper. And we really appreciate our Office of Minority Economic Empowerment, which includes Matt, who introduced himself, Vanessa Uribe, who's our Deputy Director for that group, as well as our regional economic development teams. All these folks together have been deployed to make sure that all of our businesses have equal access to the tools and resources that are out there. In addition to some of our economic recovery programs as part of our response to the pandemic, we're also continuing some of our key programs that increase access to capital, like our Advantage Illinois Loan Program. The thing that I love about this program is it has a low interest rate, especially for people of color, women, veterans, and people with disabilities. And so this is an opportunity where the state is able to buy down the interest rate and make the opportunity to lend easier for businesses that need access to those funds. So really promoting that's something where we're going to have actually increased capacity from the federal government, and our budget supersizes the amount of funding that we've got there. And so really want to make sure that we're lending to Black businesses and also looking at lending institutions that are diverse and represent the communities that need assistance. In addition to that, we're continuing to look at how we use our business enterprise program and some of our contracting elements to make sure that we're working with diverse businesses across the state. All of this are some of the things that we already have underway, but I think the Black Business Survey to me is so important because it really gives us the opportunity to hear that direct feedback from business owners, align the work that we're doing already with what we're hearing and meet people where they are, and really let folks flourish in this environment. So I can't wait to hear more from the panelists today who are going to talk a little bit about the key findings to date, and then we're all going to work together on how we implement some additional assistance to Black businesses across the state. So I won't, without further ado, I don't want to detract from the panel and our other distinguished guests. So it's now my pleasure to introduce Karen Freeman Wilson, who's the president and CEO of the Chicago Urban League, to say a few words. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much, Director Garcia. And I saw the chat light up because of the tremendous information that you're giving. So I want to thank you and Governor Pritzker for not only your leadership, but for your commitment to businesses, particularly Black and brown businesses. We are so grateful to everything that you have done, not just during the pandemic, but throughout your tenure, to really focus on those barriers that make it more difficult for Black businesses to grow and thrive. Good morning and welcome. I am excited to greet you all on behalf of the board and staff of the Chicago Urban League. And I have been excited about this survey since its inception. And that's because we understand that once you get the information, it's important to act on it and to do something to help businesses. We all know that Black businesses are the lifeblood of our community. They are the philanthropic arm very often. They are the employment portal in our community very often, and they produce the role models that our children can look up to and aspire to be. When you think about Black business in Chicago, you think about George Johnson and John Johnson and John Rogers and Jim Reynolds and so many others. You think about Jules LaFontaine and just an entire list of notable Black business leaders, some who have passed on, but who left a tremendous legacy, and some who are still living out their legacy. And so it is our honor as the Chicago Urban League to partner with Chicago State University, DCEO, and to talk about what the needs of Black businesses are today as we partner with the Chatham Business District and so many others who are focused on what the needs are. And so as you think about this survey, and as you listen to the results, I want to assure you that the Chicago Urban League is working along with others on this call and screen, and many who are not, to ensure that the barriers, that the challenges, that the experiences that you had during COVID are those that we can help you work through and ultimately grow and thrive, because our community needs our Black businesses to be strong, and we are committed to seeing that happen. So thank you. I'm looking forward to the panel, and I am pleased to introduce one of the hardest working folks in state government, someone who is an extraordinary moderator. He's always calm, cool, and collected, but then he just brings those points out so that we can all hear. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Matt Simpson and just sit and listen intently with the rest of us.
Thank you very much, Karen, President Freeman. I do really quickly just want to shout out a couple of people who are on the line with us. Calmetta Coleman, who is running the back end of the Zoom platform for us. She's a savant with the technology, and she's also an excellent coordinator with the Chicago Urban League. So I thank you, Sister Coleman. And I also want to just shout out Vanessa Uribe, who is the Deputy Director of the Illinois Office of Minority Economic Empowerment. Right now, she's responding to some questions in the chat, but she will also be sharing some closing remarks with us on the back end of our panel after we do the panel and after we do some Q&A. So just wanted to shout those people out. Thank you two very much for your support. Also, I just want to say real quick, I keep getting an unstable connection message on my end, and I don't want to play around with that. So what I'm going to do is stop my video so that it doesn't disrupt the conversation. I'm going to stop my video now. Hopefully this helps to stabilize my connection. We can get into our panel discussion. So real quickly, so it's obviously awesome to be here with our partners, Chicago State University and the Chicago Urban League. We're going to be discussing the findings from our collaborative Illinois statewide Black Business Survey. There's great feedback and the responses from businesses that we've gathered, and we're very excited to share and discuss what we've learned. This is a discussion of those priorities, and we're digging in on an ongoing basis as a committee to pull together the data and publish a more full, robust report. But today we just wanted to bring some findings back to the community who were very gracious to share information with us. So I want to start by briefly introducing our panelists. I'll start with Dean Derek Collins, who is the Dean of the Chicago State University College of Business, Professor Scott Upshaw, who is a professor of entrepreneurship and management at the Chicago State University College of Business, Kelly Evans, who is the vice president for the Entrepreneur Center at the Chicago Urban League, and Melinda Kelly, who is the president of the Chatham Business Association, a business development organization providing great support to small businesses in Chicagoland, as well as a federal community navigator providing support to businesses who need help with the federal resources that have come down to support businesses. So we thank you all for joining us today. Very excited to get into this panel, but I want to start by posing a question to all of our panelists before we get into some of the priorities and highlights. We worked very hard and in the fourth quarter of 2021, leaning on businesses, emailing people, making phone calls. We did an in-person event in the library at Chicago State. We did a panel discussion, just calling on companies to take a little time and provide some feedback. And we were honored to have 1,163 responses. So I just wanted each of us to share how important is this effort to you? What does this mean for our ability to be smart about providing support? What are your thoughts and your perspective on how important this survey is? I'll start with Derek Collins.
Thank you, Matt. I would just say that I believe that the survey is quite important because it provides us data. As you know, being in a university setting, we're in a evidence-based environment. We believe in data and looking at data to make decisions. And so when it comes to providing support to our Black businesses, we do that many times with anecdotal information and not necessarily hard data. This provides us some great insight into how businesses operate, how they think. And so by understanding that, we can best, as supporters of Black businesses, we can best align our programs and our support to the best fit those entrepreneurs' needs. So I think that's why this information is so important.
All right, we will go to Professor Upshaw.
I think it's important because it identifies who the actual business owners are. So often we have a presumption of who we think are starting businesses and what their skill sets are, but we really don't know until we ask the question. And I think that once we break down some of the personal characteristics and business characteristics of the survey, we'll realize who's the actual champion in this environment and who we should provide additional resources to so that they can strengthen their endeavors and continue to build this economy out.
I love that. It tells us who the real champions are. I love that. We're to go to Sister Kelly Evans.
Well, in addition to what the two experts before me just said, I'll just add that it also informs our service delivery, right? It kind of tells us not what we think we know or not what we presume to know about businesses so that we're prescribing things to businesses that they may or may not need, but it was actually an opportunity for businesses to tell us exactly their perspective on what their own needs are. And I think that's a really important perspective to operate in when you're trying to support businesses, that we are, creating opportunities and businesses and business opportunities and services that are really relevant to their needs.
Excellent point. And we will go to Sister Melinda Kelly.
And I am not going to repeat too much because they pretty much summed it up. As important as service providers, it helped that you'll hear later on through our many conversations, Matt, through your Strength in Numbers, the Black Collective. It helps us break it down with the different service providers. 3, information. A lot of this taking data with challenges helps us understand what's systematic, what's more programmatic, what's individual. It helps us understand the policies we need to be involved in. And it also, I think, ultimately is going to help us create an umbrella or a one-stop shop where we're still working together, but we don't try and do everything which has not worked for us in the past, because it's a lot of money to even provide technical assistance, or in the Black community, what we call trusted guidance to businesses, because you got to get their trust, get the data, and then execute. So this is that data collection is so key. It affects so many levels for the business community.
I love that when you said it helps us to understand, you know, what we need to be doing so we don't keep repeating things that don't work. I love that point. I think that the significance of this is helps us be smart and strategic about providing support to the business community. You know, I love how Sister Kelly said, it doesn't tell us what we think we know. It tells us the perspective of the community itself. I love Professor Upshaw's take on the characteristics, uncovering who the real champions are, you know, what these people, you know, look like, what our people are going through, and a profile of a business. And then how Dean Collins talked about the data not typically being available. A lot of times we use anecdotes and we think we know, but now we have a little bit more support so we can be strategic in that way. So very good first points. So now I want to call on Professor Upshaw to talk about one of the sections of the survey entitled Business Characteristics. Throughout the survey, it took about 15 minutes to complete the survey, and a major portion of the questions were related to the business characteristics, kind of the profile of the companies that exists in the state. It talked about age, it talked about their marital status, talked about the family makeup. A lot of interesting things were uncovered. So Professor Upshaw, let's start by discussing the profile of the businesses that responded. Can you share what the characteristics of the businesses were that responded, and tell us what this informs us in terms of the makeup of Black businesses in Illinois?
All right, thanks, Matthew. It's an honor to be a part of this distinguished panel, and it was a great honor to be a part of this. I thought the gathering of this information was significant today and tomorrow, because it will allow us to further develop the Black business owner. And who is that Black business owner? Well, I'm gonna use a coined phrase, Black girl magic, because that's the reality of what's going on in the state of Illinois and throughout the United States. The Black business owner is a professional female who's single, but the reality behind that is the marital rate in the state of Illinois is greater than the marital rate for African Americans throughout the United States. So it shows that individuals in the state of Illinois are using their resources and their homes to really build good business ventures. Those individuals have children, and they are in the ages between their late 20s and mid 50s. So these individuals are seasoned. One of the correlations that I like to make is African American females are the largest group that are obtaining college degrees. So I think there's a correlation between this higher education and business development. Surveys show that, or studies show that business owners most of your business owners they have some form of higher education. So what it does is it gives credence to going out, getting the education, and then starting a business. Now, I'm not saying that, oh, that's how you have to do it. I'm saying that this is what the study says, this is what surveys say, and we want to provide you with the best opportunity possible. Later on in the presentation, we'll talk about training and development, and I think that's a big part of this also. When we look at the small business owner in the state of Illinois, in the Black communities, they're developing LLCs because they understand that they need to protect their personal assets and they need to structure a business so that it makes sense. When you have a sole proprietorship, it tends to put you in situations that are not really not really geared towards your success. So we want to make sure that these businesses are legitimate and that they're putting forth the effort to create something that has a foundation and has stability. These businesses are home-based, which aren't bad. And what we want to do is we want to start to look at how can we transition those businesses or scale them up from out of the home to a co-working space, to a incubator, and then to a brick and mortar, so that they grow the business as the business is needed. One of the things that we realized is the average business is 3 to 9 years old, which gives great credence to the fact that once you get to that 10-year anniversary, 80% of most small businesses have sunset. So you're looking at that Black businesses in Illinois are exceeding the national averages. So we want to commend those individuals who are sticking to it and really continuing to put forth that effort. Now, where there's praise, there's some type of distress. And one of the biggest things that we uncovered is the revenue generation from these businesses was very small prior to the pandemic, and it may have decreased even more since the pandemic. So we want to make sure that we're in the future parts of this survey that we're talking about. How do we increase revenues? How do we do the things that are going to assist these businesses to be successful? And as I transition, one of the aspects that we found that Black businesses aren't taking advantage of is B2b relationships, where you have supplier, you have distribution, because our businesses are selling ones and twos. Let's sell ones and 200s. Now we can create a economy and jobs, as opposed to trying to or doing the fewest as opposed to doing the most. And one of the things that we also realize is we're not taking advantage of contracting opportunities locally and on a state and federal level. As a part of a previous employment, I did minority certification for the city of Chicago. And there's a number of African-American businesses that are applying, but they get so bogged down in the extensive documentation that's needed, to whereas they kind of get, they don't follow through because they're tired of providing more and more and more information. So we need to make sure that they stick to it, because these are opportunities that can provide these Black business owners with the ability to generate revenues, create jobs, and really grow their business and scale it to a point where they're able to create other businesses and really create an economy that benefits the communities and the individuals themselves. All right, Matthew, I'm gonna stop there now because I don't want to take over the whole show.
Okay. No, so that's powerful. What I'm hearing is Black girl magic, first and foremost. Black women are outpacing Black men in terms of business startup, which is in line with national data. You know, the fastest segment in terms of demographic population contributing to business startups is Black women nationally, and we see the same thing happening at the state level.
And Matthew, the Black women are outpacing white males. So the only problem is they're failing at a much higher rate than all groups. So there's resources that need to be in place to solidify these businesses.
Understood. The professional degree holders, that's also a very interesting piece. Many of the business respondents shared that they are professional degree holders, meaning above a bachelor's degrees. Very interesting that there are majority home-based businesses are Black businesses in Illinois. They are developing corporate structure of most prominently LLCs over just maintaining the sole proprietor status. And they're in business on average between 3 to 9 years. That's a powerful perspective. I think it's also interesting that, you know, a Black business owner and that marriage rate, Black businesses, a Black person that is married is likely also to be a business owner. That's kind of what that sounds like. And on the other side, we saw the revenues for Black businesses were low prior to the pandemic and significantly impacted revenues by the pandemic. A lot of opportunities for our companies to start doing B2B engagement opportunities and procurement with the local governments and state governments. Some great feedback, a really interesting profile. Professor, can you talk a little bit about that piece on the motivations? You know, why these companies shared that they started the businesses?
For the most part, and thinking about the maternal instincts, it was community development. And that caught me off guard from the standpoint that I would have thought everybody's mindset or rationale for starting a business was, hey, I want to create income for myself. I want to change my quality of life. No, they said it was community based. They wanted to help build their community. So I found that to make a lot more sense. And the more we delve into this, the more it showed that, you know, these African-American business owners are not just about their own prosperity, but they're about the prosperity of their fellow man or fellow woman. So we have to make sure that we provide as many resources as we possibly can, because it's there. The majority of these individuals are starting these businesses by themselves. They're using their own revenues or their own incomes or their own startup dollars. We find that, and it'll be talked about, that access to capital is limited. So when you have this situation, where's the help at? How can we strategically create a program or policy to help these individuals survive, to thrive, and to become the businesses that they seek to become?
Yeah, I just think that's such a powerful point too. When we ask the question about motivations, why are you starting your business? Overwhelmingly, the response was for reasons, you know, that were more outwardly or community focused. Like you said, I want to solve problems in my community. I want to create jobs. Sometimes it was related to overcoming an obstacle from their background. You know, they could not find a job, so they created one for themselves. And I think that's a really interesting cultural nuance to keep in mind for Black businesses. A lot of the aims and motivations are outward and community focused. And that's a really powerful opportunity, like you said, Professor, in providing support, how impactful that can be for a business that whole motivation is to solve problems in the community. I thought that was powerful.
And Matthew, when you break it down like that, you have to realize that the conventional business development may not work. And if it doesn't work, we have to build a better mousetrap. And that's what we keep doing. I don't know who said it earlier, but they said basically the definition of insanity is to keep trying to do something over and over and expecting doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Where that's what we're doing. And we're putting that onus on our Black businesses, saying, hey, well, you just keep doing it this way, it'll eventually work out. It's not going to work out. So let's change the paradigm and see what we can get. And if we change the paradigm and it doesn't change, then we just do something else. But we can't keep saying, oh, here's these same old resources, you know, utilize them and you'll be successful, when we realize one guy said, or one individual stated that they had 7 felonies. That's not common in other communities. We have situations where we have a lot of recidivism, and we need to build programs and entrepreneurial opportunities that impact those individuals so that they can say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna learn a trade, or I'm gonna learn a skill set that is going to keep me out of the penal system, and therefore I can build for my family and help the community. So
Mhm.
it's a different. We can't keep doing it the same way and expecting a different result.
Yes, sir. One more thing I want to touch on before I bring the panel in to discuss this piece. You know, so many of our businesses responded that they've started the business alone and they don't have employees. You know what I mean? And that's a completely different experience when you are fighting by yourself. So, you know, you started the business alone with low capital, you don't have employees, and all you have on your mind is serving your community. That's a powerful, you know, profile of a business to consider as we work to provide support. So now bringing in the panel, thank you, Professor Upshaw, for just giving that feedback on that business characteristic section. I want to ask, why is this important that we know what the Black businesses in Illinois look like? And given this information, how should people who intend to support Black businesses work to engage and connect?
Is that open for anyone to answer?
That's open for you, Sister Evans.
Well, I just want to say that Professor Upshaw just kind of gave us the formula, right? I think it's important for us to know, because if what we're doing is not working, we have to do something different. And going back to my earlier point of why this was important in the first place is to inform how we do stuff, right? I love what Melinda said. You know, we have to, this gave us an opportunity to understand, was it a policy issue? Is it a programming issue? Is it something, is it a legislative issue? Like what's the pain point that we need to address? And so I think just what Professor Upshaw said, if there is a specific nuance situation that causes Black businesses to start at a greater level and fail at an even greater level, we need to put specific fail stops in place so that that doesn't continue to happen, and that we can support businesses in the ways that they need to be supported. One thing that I did want to say, and I know my team knows this, because as we were going through the results, we were really surprised by the fact that, you know, people start businesses in our community for a greater good. And we're like, what? The greater good isn't like to, you know, make more coins, because that's what we talk about, but it really is to impact our community at a greater level. Now, what was funny to me, so this is a shameless plug for Chicago Urban League. We are doing a Black History movie showing this evening at 6 o'clock at our office on 45th and Michigan, and we are looking at the documentary. If anybody has ever heard of it, Boss. It is it's a documentary and a really historical look at Black businesses. And one of the things that they talked about from the very onstart of this documentary was that we started businesses in slavery for the good of our community. It was to either buy back our relatives, to buy our freedom. And then as we moved in Reconstruction, we did it because people wouldn't sell to us. So we started our own stuff. And so I think from a cultural perspective, and, you know, getting into my social science, you know, background, we have generational memories, right? That we don't even, generational behaviors that we don't even really understand why we continue to do the things that we do. And I think that this is one of them. We've always started businesses with a community mindset. Like, how does this benefit the larger community? And one of the reasons that my title here that Karen kind of developed was not just entrepreneurship, but economic development, because as we develop entrepreneurs, the greater good is to create economic development for a community. So yes, we want to see individual businesses succeed, but we also want to see them succeed so that they can support the greater community. And so that is a natural consequence of why we start businesses, which was surprising to all of us, I think, when we were going through this survey. But it makes sense if you look at our history. And I saw somebody in the chat who's seen the documentary. It is absolutely excellent. As we learn about why we start businesses the way that we do, even when we don't really realize that is why. One more point, and I'm gonna let Dean Collins have it. You talked about, you know, the inability for a lot of our community residents to get employment, and so they started their own businesses, you know, having had, you know, overrepresented contact with the penal system. I'm going another shameless plug for one of our partners, Adam Farmer. I'm saying Lee Farmer, Adam Farmer of Larry's Barber College. If you guys ever have an opportunity to hear him speak about why they do what they do, I remember when Larry's Barber College first started going into the prison system to teach felons who were coming out of jail, or to teach inmates who were coming out of jail how to have a trade so that when they got out, they could start their own businesses. And now it's turned into an entire workforce program. And it is phenomenal, the impact that they have on folks coming, out of jail and just in the community who want to do something different. And so we do have those businesses that are doing just what we need them to do in terms of supporting the greater community.
Okay, so one thing I want to hear you repeat is that piece on that culture and the way that we have a generational memory. How we've uncovered in this survey that Black businesses often have communal aims to engaging in entrepreneurship. And then you said the Boss documentary, which I need to tap into, it uncovered so often in our history, which is bigger than slavery, but this particular documentary uncovered that in slavery and post-slavery, we were doing the same thing. Can you just repeat that again?
Yeah, just the documentary specifically talked about the reasons why folks, and this is unique to the African American experience, and I full well understand we have a whole history before slavery, but our history as African Americans in this country and why we do things the way we do, I think is informed by kind of what we've done post-slavery, because that's what we had to do. And what the documentary highlights is the fact that folks, even in slavery, started their own businesses so that they could initially buy their freedom and buy back the freedom of their loved ones, but also to buy those to support those goods and services in their community that they couldn't get elsewhere. And then one thing that, and I know we are not really talking about this right now, but one of the things that we talked about as we were discussing this survey about how the dollar circulates or doesn't circulate in our community and what to do about it. And the Freedmen's Bank was like the first Black bank in America that was owned by Black folks. Now, it wasn't owned by Black folks. It was started for Black folks who had businesses. And then it was, of course, pilfered. But the importance of having banking systems, that are specific to our community and our needs. And I know we talked about this a little bit in our conversations, but needing to have those systems to support our businesses that are community-based, having a different understanding of the reasons why people start businesses, what those businesses look like. They don't necessarily meet, all of the algorithm, that the banking departments require for you to get loans, but understanding those nuanced specific things that Black businesses, the challenges that they have and the unique reasons that they start businesses and why those businesses look the way they do is something that we need to have an understanding about from our banking systems. And so I think that when we talk about the generational memory of why we start businesses, we have to take all of those things into considerations, not only why we start businesses, but what those businesses look like, what the goals of those businesses are, which are so different a lot of times from the goals of other businesses, and what those businesses need that are specific to community-based businesses.
Okay, that's awesome. And then you gave us a little piece of what you're gonna be talking about next, but so I'm glad you reeled it back. So now I want to hear from Dean Collins real quick, your piece on these business characteristics. Why is this important? How can we, be smart about using this feedback as we support businesses? And then we'll go to Sister Kelly.
Absolutely. I think, in terms of this survey, this information, does provide the data we need to try to provide this assistance to our fellow Black business owners in our community. And some of the challenges that actually we cited or that was cited in the survey give some credence to this. So I just want to bring up just a couple of those challenges to provide a little bit of insight into what our businesses are experiencing. One of the bigger challenges that the businesses were experiencing were the hiring of qualified individuals. When it came to hiring them, roughly 23% of the respondents were saying that they had a lack of access to qualified candidates. But what was interesting was that 30 to 33% of the respondents had problems of accessing employees because of the cost being prohibitive. Either the cost of the employee itself, the salary was prohibitive for them, or the cost of providing healthcare and other benefits was prohibitive. So one of the reasons that if we look at the numbers in terms of the high incidence of businesses without employees, that's one of the reasons. One of the reasons being the cost, followed a little bit by access, but I think the cost is probably more prevalent, as indicated by the numbers. One of the other big challenges was interesting was that the respondents said that they had a little bit had a trouble accessing appropriate space, affordable brick and mortar locations or buildings that accommodate their business needs. So roughly about 20 to 22% of the respondents responded that this lack of access to this brick and mortar was an issue. But that actually brings up at least another question. And that is that, well, a couple of things. One, because so many businesses were impacted by COVID, especially our brick and mortar locations, right? That brings up this issue of do some of the businesses need to pivot or change or modify their operations? Roughly a quarter of the businesses were cited a stagnant economy or the COVID impact is really impacted their business. And for some businesses, as the environment gets better, the mandates are lifted, those businesses probably will return back to full strength. Some will be some businesses will actually be permanently impacted. Some businesses actually have gone away. But it brings up a question of going forward, knowing that this risk is out there, how do you change it? If so, to what extent? You see right now in the larger body of business in the United States, you see a lot more reshoring, right? Because of so many of our critical pieces to our supply chain in the manufacturing environments were harmed because of COVID, because we were waiting on devices from China or some other place in the world. And now we're saying, well, I don't know if we want to take that risk. We should bring that stuff back over to the United States so we have better control over that. So that is an element that's impacted the broader business base. So what are those things from COVID that now says that we have to, within the Black business community, alter the way that we operate? So the combination of a pandemic and having such an impact, and this idea that having lack of access to brick and mortar really brings up an issue of strategy, quite frankly. As you go forward, how do you pivot? Do you pivot? What is the strategy to stay viable and thrive in this changing environment? So one of the things that these challenges are bringing up is the need to really help our businesses in forming a viable strategy that can withstand the challenges of the current moment, whether it be COVID now, whether it be something else into the future. That the businesses, the best businesses that we know just by history and anecdotally, that the best businesses are the ones that are able to adapt, to change, that can meet the environmental challenges. And so that's one of the areas where I think that we really can be helpful, is help really bringing in some real strong strategy to these businesses to help them to pivot and meet changing environments. And then lastly, and again, I think this also brings up the strategy issue. One of the big challenges for a lot of the businesses was actually the integration, implementation of beneficial technology. Roughly a third of the respondents said they had difficulties implementing a beneficial technology. That technology being like a website, inventory management system, a point of sale system, but technology that can help them in the operations of their business. A third. So that number, that percentage is much, much, much smaller. Technology in today's world is very helpful. And in most cases, when it comes to business, is necessary. So helping the businesses become technically efficient, leveraging that technology to deliver their goods and services, that has to be our priority in assisting businesses to thrive. So when I look at those challenges, whether it be the hiring of individuals, because now you say that the hiring of individuals, that one of the biggest issues was cost. The question becomes a little bit of a question. I know things are rising, but cost of employees hasn't changed that dramatically in the last several years. It's always high, it's been high, and it does increase a bit, but it hasn't had dramatic swings. So the question becomes, well, what was the planning and the strategy around that in the first place? So what is the planning and strategy going forward if you're going to build a business? So if I look at those challenges, from accessing employees, right, to accessing a solid brick and mortar place, or if a brick and mortar is actually needed, to implementing new technology, to me, all of those three challenges fall under the rubric of it can be improved with better strategy on how we look at this. And no one strategy will fit everyone. It has to be an individual one-on-one. Let's dig into the scenario of the business, of the future of that particular industry, of what's happening in your local community, and let's devise a strategy that could be to make the business viable and sustainable. So as I look at those challenges, what I see is that these are challenges that can be met, but they will definitely need some really deep thinking and some really strong and solid counsel in helping folks develop viable strategies for that.
Right. Dean Collins, thank you so much, because what you just did, and I'm looking at the clock, so I'm kind of glad you did. I wanted you to touch on business characteristics, but what you did was you jumped to your section on business challenges. But I'm glad you did. That's probably that wisdom that you got over me, and I appreciate you using that wisdom, because we need to make sure the conversation is moving forward. So Dean Collins just touched on another section of the survey where we asked respondents to share their perspective on unique business challenges. And what the Dean just mentioned was there were some issues with employees. There were some challenges trying to approach this brick and mortar idea, viable spaces to operate. And then there was a piece about technology that a lot of our companies struggled with. And the Dean mentioned that a third of businesses are having trouble adapting to technology. And we understand in the landscape that we're operating in today, that's make or break in your ability to succeed with using technology. So I think that's powerful. And I just, want to ask, I'll ask Sister Kelly, Melinda Kelly, hearing these pieces where the Dean is talking about these challenges oftentimes can be addressed by considering strategy and planning more prominently on the front end. So just from your seat, what are your thoughts on that piece? The challenges that businesses have, what can we be doing around strategy to help address some of these challenges?
As I listened to Professor Upshaw, who talked about, we have the educated Black folks who have the technical and the accreditation skills, but being an entrepreneur, there's a lot about a specific niche you need to know, and it also you need knowledge and judgment that will depend on your success, which why it also makes it pretty equal opportunity sometimes for our folks that have returning citizens who have those X's on their back or those backgrounds. So the good news is that no matter who you are as a business owner, if you focus on your finances and your growth strategy, it really can make or break you. But we have to remember, especially for Black entrepreneurs, unlike other cultural businesses like Jewish families where they're more immersed, where the family has years of industry in jury or other districts. And then what happens is they start their business and they've got family support. They've already been introduced to banking institutions that understand their businesses. For the most part, Black and brown businesses are thrown into this entrepreneur with no type of support. And so what the study showed is that they start these businesses in addition to being alone, but with their personal savings and their credit cards and gifts and loans. Well, so your foundation that is not sustainable for running a business. So really there is a need to, on our side, to make sure that every business has a growth strategy that focuses on finances. Every business should be a part of an organization from Chatham Business Association to any of the Black collective organizations that you bring together on the monthly call, Matt, because what we have to do is help them understand things like their credit score, their business credit score. We talked about technology, leasing, zoning. That all ties to your budget. And that negative number, whatever it is, there has to be a strategy to help the businesses have contracts, a diverse amount of contracts to produce that. So what the study did help us understand that the businesses did mention, as mentioned before, there's a lack of access to funding and capital. They feel left out. One of the things the study did highlight that the majority owners of businesses, they are familiar with their personal credit score, but they're not as familiar with their business credit score or what's impacting their inability to access capital. There was talked before by the panelists about, we have to make sure that our businesses revenue, if they're generating revenue of 50K, that's just not enough to sustain them and grow. We've got to get them past that process. And that takes, as Dean Collins mentioned, it takes being strategic. There is no one size fits all. We as leadership that run these organizations that are our service providers, we've got to figure out models like 1871 that focuses on building technology. We've got to come together as Black leadership to make sure that we do those same type of models that help businesses develop. They've got to be exposed to what their worth is. If a business doesn't know their net worth, it makes it hard for joint venturing and teaming agreements. And as the opportunities in Illinois are abundant, those are the type of things you need. You need organizations to connect you to professional, accessible, and affordable Black CPAs or other CPAs, a legal team. It has to be a team to help you work on your strategy. So I'll stop there, but it just goes to show that there's a lot of work that we need to do. We have to be more innovative in how we're going to access this capital. There's angel investments, there's other things that we are going to have to make sure we concentrate and educate. But more importantly, I think we've got to make sure that they have a diverse access to the private sector, the public sector on contracts, because if you can get that positive number, it really impacts your ability to access capital. I can't say enough that although how much passion a business has, if you cannot explain to your banker or match yourself with a banker who understands your return on your investment and how they're going to get paid back, it does make you feel excluded. Now, on the other hand, I do want to mention there are systematic research that was also in the report that shows that there is systematic things that are excluding us from actually accessing capital. One of them was, according to the Federal Reserve, 80.2% of white business owners receive at least a percentage of funding they request from a bank, compared to 66.4% of Black business owners. And then also, Black applications are rejected at a higher rate than white businesses when applying for credit. So there's a lot of work to be done, but we found that the most businesses that grow longevity and the fastest really understand their finances, because every decision is a financial decision, and they really have a good team behind them, consisting of organizations, industry experts, CPAs, and legal teams that can help them navigate these waters, because these are some very rough waters to navigate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kelly, for that response. And you touched on a couple of things, kind of foreshadowing the next couple of sections that we'll uncover. But I think it's something that you really, pointing back to history again, because we need to always remember, we need to always leverage our lived experiences personally and our ancestors to inform our way forward. We talked about our some of the cultures that we're seeing in the community that have those models and that were exposed in ways that we weren't. They can pull together those strategies, and you made it plain and clear for us. Growth strategy on finance. Growth strategy on finance. I think that's really smart, and these are things that we're going to help support Black businesses with as we move forward with this data. But that's a powerful response. Thank you so much, Mr. Kelly. 2 more sections in the survey we want to uncover. I see some great banter in the chat. This is probably the best exchange that we've been able to see on our panels. The team, that means we had to keep getting together like this so we can get our community together to have these conversations. So what I'll do is, Sister Melinda Kelly did foreshadow with the finances, and there was another section that we wanted to talk about related to training and development. But I want to start with finances and allow for Sister Kelly Evans to talk about some of the feedback we received from businesses around the questions of access to finances and capital.
Yeah, well, Melinda just actually spelled out a lot of the points that I wanted to pull out of that. So I don't want to be redundant, and I'll just kind of go through the list that I kind of went through. But we found out that most of our businesses, and this is not really a surprise, start businesses in terms of capital from personal savings, credit cards, loans to friends, in small increments. I think we said the most significant amount borrowed or started was between $1,000 and $4,999, with the next greatest amount being roughly 10,000 and up, and then 10,000 to almost 20,000 in terms of borrowing. And so one of the things, and we talked about, I did want to mention the feeling excluded from banking and financing, and put a pin in that because I have a larger thought around that. But one of the things that we talked about as we were going through the results is that this is not enough money for a sustainable business, right? If you are borrowing $5,000 to start your business, it's not. I don't know a business that can survive off $5,000, moving forward. And part of that is really what Melinda is talking about in terms of our businesses really not being scalable. So we know that in order to grow businesses, all those things that Melinda just talked about in terms of contracting and procurement opportunities, and even collaborative efforts with business to business. But if you don't have a scalable business, you can't even engage in those processes to move your business forward. And one of the things that we see over and over again working with our businesses is that our businesses don't start with the end in mind, right? I know how to bake a good pie, I'm going to start a bakery. But I'm not thinking about all of the stuff that goes into actually running a bakery. I'm just thinking about the fact that I can make really good pies because I got my grandma's recipe. But I'm not thinking about inventory control. I'm not thinking about accounting. I'm not thinking about marketing. I'm not thinking about spoilage, of all the stuff that I buy and goes bad, or the stuff that I don't sell. I'm not thinking of my business in a long-term strategy. And I think that is where a lot of our businesses fail. And are not able to grow, even when they don't fail, but are not able to grow and scale. And what we do know that there are tons of support systems out here for startup businesses, and there's not so many for businesses that need to learn how to scale. And so I think more service and attention needs to be given toward businesses in those later stages of operation. You made it past 2 years, what's next? How do you move to the next level? Like Melinda said, or I think maybe it was Professor Upshaw that said, you made $50,000, but that's not a lot of money. That's not that's not a bankable, it's a bankable business, but it's not an investable business. And so how do we get our businesses to the point that they are investable, whether that's through banks or other financial investment opportunities, and how do we scale them and make them grow and be actually sustainable businesses that can live on. So that's one of the things that that I really wanted to spend a little time thinking about, just that our businesses don't start with the end in mind, right? They just want to get started. And again, going back to Dean Collins' point about, businesses wanting to go into brick and mortar and not understanding that they may need to pivot, understanding, like, does your business even really need to be in a brick and mortar? Are there other more efficient, effective ways to, yes, I love franchises from Tiara. She just said that's a whole nother conversation. But you're so on point right there. But what other ways can we grow our businesses other than the traditional methods that we've already done? And when we talk about, and I know I'm supposed to be talking about access to finances, Matt, but when we think about how to scale our businesses and how to grow our businesses, it informs what kind of capital we need access to. And so I think that, none of these points are individual points. They're all tightly woven together, and you can't really address one without really addressing all of them, and understanding where in the life cycle your business is, and what your financial needs are at any given time. So while $5,000 may have started your business, what is your business going to need in 12 months or 24 months, and planning for those things, which goes back to understanding your credit score, understanding, scalability of your business. Everybody's seen Shark Tank. Is this even a business that is investable? Sometimes it isn't, and that's okay, but just understand that. And so I think that a lot more education and service delivery needs to go around what businesses need to look like so that we can better inform how to get them access to capital. One of the things that was very interesting to me is that with all that is said about the lack of access to capital, a lot of our businesses were able to get the PPP loans and other COVID relief money. A lot were not because of other reasons, financial records not in order and that, but a significant percentage of our businesses were able to access that money. But what's interesting about that money generally wasn't loans, it was grants. And so that's a whole nother conversation of why that is. But what I want to come back to real quick, and then I'll be quiet again, is the feeling of being excluded from the banking systems. And I think that the feeling of being excluded, really, I think that we need to dig deeper into what that is and what that means, because a lot of times the feeling of being excluded prevents a lot of businesses from even trying to do those things that would make them attractive to investing, bank investments and banking loans. And so we have to address, what is this, why are and I have some ideas about why businesses feel excluded, but we have to address the why they feel excluded, so then we can determine how to meet those needs so that they can participate in the banking system. And one of those things, real quick, is that we have to have businesses that are more invested in our community. We do have Chicago Urban League has great relationships with the banks that we work with, but every organization and community doesn't have access to that. And if you're not in a program or service such as ours, such as what Melinda's doing, you might not have those relationships or have access to those relationships. And when you don't have banking relationships, I'm talking about people who know you by name, who you can walk into the bank, they know your business, they know your kid, your kids, your anniversary date. Those are relationships, and those folks, because of those relationships, have a vested interest in your success. Our businesses don't have that, and so that is that is also a really, really big significant reason why our businesses are not able to participate in the larger banking relationship strategy of financing their businesses too.
Thank you so much, Sister Evans. Great feedback on the financing. I think you always offer something really interesting on that relationship piece about how often our businesses are presumed risky. As a matter of course, almost as a matter of the location where the business is operating, the background of the person who is approaching the bank for lending. And that's another piece that was covered in a survey. And again, this is a sneak peek at what we gathered, and we will be publishing a robust report. But we wanted to make sure, out of respect for the community that shared with us, we wanted to bring you some feedback and offer some dialogue on these points. The last section was on training and development. So I want to ask Professor Upshaw to touch on training and development, and then we're gonna get into as many questions as we can as we respect your time on this Monday morning. So Professor Upshaw.
All right, I'm gonna try to go real quick, Matthew, so we can have a little time to have some more banter. One of the things that we found in the survey was your traditional Black business, they did the common trainings, they did the marketing, the accounting, the business development. Everybody's telling them they need a business plan, or they need to do a QuickBooks class, or social media marketing. Everybody's doing that, and they're taking those trainings, and those trainings are assisting them. What they're not focusing on is the operational management and the leadership development. One of the things that we've mentioned throughout this survey was that, or throughout this panel discussion, was that these entrepreneurs are solopreneurs, where they're doing it by themselves and they're doing it without any assistance. But a lot of that is because they don't recognize that they need assistance, that they have a product or service that is scalable, and that they need to bring somebody in to assist them. Business owners know what they do well. They know their product, they know their service. Once you know that, you have to start to bring others in so you can focus on the product or service, so that other individuals can do the office maintenance or what have you, because the business is going to run regardless. If you don't run it, it will fail. So what we need to do is we need to start making sure that our businesses are focusing some of their efforts on leadership and CRM, where they're focusing on customer retention management programs, because a lot of times we lose our businesses or our ability to be successful, not because we don't know our product or service, it's because we don't do the business part of it very well, or as well as we need to do it with regards to the product or service. One of the things we also realize is our businesses are very comfortable with who we know, but the reality behind it, sometimes we don't have the right relationships, and we are somewhat scared, if that's a good word, but we're real leery of going out talking to other people because we don't know what their intentions are. So what we do is we continue to talk to the same people that may not have the business acumen that we need to glean from. And therefore, we're only able to go so high in that success chart because we're not meeting the right people. That's why we recommend that you get involved with the Chatham Business Association, any chamber of commerce in the communities that you live in, because those are great networking opportunities, because you see individuals that have some of the same skill sets or some of the same problems. They've done it already. So what it does is it reduces your learning curve. And then also we saw that Black businesses aren't utilizing the resources that are out there from the standpoint of accelerators, incubators, co-working spaces, because those provide you with a level of capacity building that you may not have in your home-based business. You have resources, you have opportunities to meet others, to really sit down and talk through strategy with individuals that are doing the exact same thing. When we look at this communal development, we have to develop it not in silos, but in fields, so that we are all understanding the same things. One of the biggest things that we try to realize is when you talk to other businesses about business, you both become better business owners. And sometimes we want to hold things to our heart because we think that people are trying to steal our ideas, but sometimes you need to bounce ideas off of other individuals so that they can give you that little nugget that'll help you grow that business today and tomorrow. All right, Matthew, I'm gonna wrap that up because I can go forever, but I know we got question and answer, so take over.
Man, I think what was so interesting about your section on training and development, that we asked the community, where do you turn for support? Where do you look for guidance? And an overwhelming amount of our businesses say they trust their own instincts and they trust their existing network. And I think that's in line with what you said earlier, Professor Upshaw. Our communal aims, it's kind of cultural. We trust our gut. We feel our way through it, and our network is the support that we need to survive. Oftentimes, that's all we've had. So culturally, it makes sense. But then when we consider, like you said, Melinda Kelly, that strategy for growth, and then, like you said, Sister Evans, relationships, it's like you don't know what you don't know. And when you have limited networks, that also limits your access to capital and opportunities. So it's just really interesting. That's another unique characteristic of our businesses. We have communal aims and we really lean on our instincts. So it's important for us service providers to reestablish those trust bridges. There isn't a lot of trust between the insiders, quote unquote, the people who mean well. And it's on us to improve those connections and really provide true support. Because a lot of people feel like the support, quote unquote, and the resource, quote unquote, that are available aren't real. And there are only certain people who get it. So we have to do better because a lot of our businesses are alone, as we've seen before. Thank you very much. Great panel. We will have like I said, a full report being published. I think we'll go over a little bit to make sure that we can get into these questions. And again, I want to point people to the Q&A box. Please drop your questions in the Q&A box. Let me see here. Let me see. Why do we continuously say we are eliminating barriers to entry for Black entrepreneurs when we are actually perpetuating the barriers by implementing reimbursable grant funding for Black business owners? And no other state is using federal funds in this way. This is not leveling the playing field or eliminating access to capital funding that plagues our Black business owners in Illinois. Thank you. When you say reimbursable grants, I think that we want to make sure we help, clarify from the state of Illinois. There were two significant COVID relief programs that were released: the Business Interruption Grant and the Back to Business Grant. These have nothing to do with reimbursement. There is no repayment that needs to take place. The state of Illinois stood up some significant funding in the form of grants that did not need to be repaid. And it was about trying to do all we could to extend finances to businesses that needed it the most. We did a lot through our community navigators network. And Melinda Kelly is one of those federal navigators. Okay, so she's speaking to the Chicago Recovery Grant. Well, that's a little bit unique, and I don't know that anyone on our panel can speak to that one specifically. But we do understand how important access to capital is, and making sure that our businesses are able to connect with it. I did see a question about the industries that Black businesses operate in, and I know Professor Upshaw, that was one of your points underneath business characteristics. Can you just share a little bit about what we learned from the respondents about industries that Black businesses tend to operate in?
And surprisingly, it focused on the professional services. One of the things that I thought was going to be number one was retail. Retail came in fourth, and food and restaurants, educational services, then retail. So you went professional services, food and restaurants, education, then retail, then personal services. So it shows that African Americans are diverse in what they're doing, and they're not just doing things that they are comfortable with. They're doing things that they're learning. They're doing things that they are excelling in, and they're trying to bring different aspects to their businesses in the communities that they reside in or that they are operating in, because by doing so, that dollar stays within that community and it goes from hand to hand as opposed to going out of the community. So we have to keep that in mind and support those businesses that you can.
Really interesting. Professional services was the highest response for the industry that Black businesses operate in, followed by food and restaurant, then educational and social services, then retail, and then personal services. So that was the top 5 there. Professional services, and that kind of makes sense because a lot of the respondents also said that they are doing home-based businesses. So that's the type of business you can do when you have a home-based company. Professional services, perhaps it is accounting, perhaps it is some more formal marketing, legal services that are being engaged in. And then we had the food and restaurant. We know many of our businesses were in the restaurant industry, which was significantly impacted by COVID, had to shutter our doors. Many of our businesses couldn't pivot in the way that others could. Another high response was the educational and social services. We believe that's childcare businesses. A lot of Black businesses operate in the childcare space. Another heavily impacted business industry by COVID. The state of Illinois did have the childcare restoration grant program to intervene. Retail was huge. A lot of our, businesses, perhaps they sell, clothing and jewelry, perhaps it's beauty supplies. Retail is a very broad section. And then personal services, which is the beauty and barber industry. Another industry that was devastated by the pandemic, because of the nature of personal services, you have to be in close contact, and the pandemic didn't allow for that to happen. So that industry was brought to its knees, and a lot of support needed around that space. So on the clock, we got 2 minutes. I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to respect everybody's time as well. We had a very dynamic conversation here. We want you all to know that in the coming weeks, we will be finalizing our report, combing through data, and working to publish the information, bringing it to communities across the state to provide support to the organizations that are helping Black businesses. Melinda Kelly mentioned a couple of times, and I'm gonna roll the dice and turn my camera back on. Hopefully my connection issues don't persist. Sister Kelly talked about how in the Office of Minority Economic Empowerment, I'm convening a group of Black business development organizations from across the state. It's called the Black Business Collective. Melinda Kelly is one of those organizations. The Urban League also supports us. And what we're doing is we're creating a network to provide for information sharing and support from Rockford, Illinois down to Cairo, Illinois, with these chambers of commerce and business leaders. And at that table, we're working to help businesses succeed, specifically Black businesses. So we want to use this data and bring it to communities across the state so we can make it real. And we're not trying to overpromise anything, but we're really just repeating our commitment to being smart about providing support and being a good partner to the organizations on the ground doing the real work. So I want to thank everybody for your time. And I want to invite our Deputy Director in the Illinois Office of Minority Economic Empowerment, Vanessa Uribe, to provide some closing remarks.
Thanks so much, Matt. And thank you everyone for joining us. I feel like you did a really great job of summing it up. I was taking notes throughout this entire panel. Thank you to each of the panelists. So for folks that are joining us, just so you know, the panelists here today have done so much work to prep for the survey, to get the survey launched, to really review the data. There's been so much work that's gone on behind the scenes. So I just wanted to personally thank each of you for your leadership, your partnership, and your collaboration, because this work is so important. And if it wasn't for your leadership, you know, it wouldn't be happening. So thank you. The conversations were so insightful. We learned that business owners that they really believe in serving and benefiting the community. Dean Collins shared that developing a long-term strategy is the key to ensuring that businesses can navigate and pivot during challenges, and we saw that over the last 2 years. We knew this already, but it was demonstrated that women can really rock it and know how to develop, you know, new businesses and really get the work done. Ms. Kelly talked about developing a financial growth strategy, right? So be very intentional about that. Ms. Evans shared that you have to think about the attractiveness of your business, right? So that you can ensure investment in your business. And then I just saw in the chat, being very intentional about where we spend our money, right? If the dollar only lasts 6 hours in the community, then we got to do a better job of being very intentional about supporting our businesses and keeping the funds in the community so that our community benefits from it. The one thing that resonated with me the most was Professor Upshaw saying that we need to change the paradigm. And I believe in this. I've dedicated my career to this. We have to change the system, right? We know that these things don't work, and we try to do this work through our Office of Minority Economic Empowerment. I'm sure you'll agree with me. Matt Simpson is absolutely amazing and a rock star, and I'm lucky that I get to work with him. And together, we're really trying to think about ways that we can better support minority-owned businesses, and not just now during Black History Month, but we do this work year-round. And we're really looking for ways to be more equitable, and what that means is getting folks what they need to be successful, and so they can reach their potential, and not saying everyone gets the same thing, and you know, we're going to fix the system that way. So we have to change how we develop our programs so that they're actually meeting where businesses need them, and that's why this survey is going to be so important. We need to push back against the status quo. We really need to change that paradigm. The old way wasn't working, and so we need to figure out what we have to do so that it works for us. And then we need to advocate for more increased investment. And so I saw a lot of comments in the chat about, you know, how do we better support our businesses? That's something that, you know, I can guarantee that Matt and I in our work are we call ourselves equity champions, but we're really advocating for more investment in our communities. So please stay connected to the Office of Minority Economic Empowerment. Matt leads the Black Business Collective. This is this platform that he just shared, where we are doing this work year round. We are moving the needle. So please stay connected to us. Get on our listserv. You know, check out our webinars. Reach out to us with any questions. We'll drop our contact information in the chat. It's also on our website, dceo.illinois.gov. And you know, I want you to know that we're here to support you. And then lastly, just want to give a quick shout out to the Urban League. So please don't forget to check out the documentary Boss. It sounds great. I got to check it out too. It'll be showing tonight at the Urban League office at 6 p.m. at 45th in Michigan. Let me know if I missed anything there. Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
All right. So thank you. With that, I did just drop the OMI database sign up link in the chat. I'm also sharing the link to the Illinois Department of Commerce OMI webpage. We host webinars about access to capital. We host partnerships around building capacity with the Small Business Development Center network throughout the state. And most importantly, we're continuing to be partners with the great people leading the Chicago Urban League and the Chicago State University on an ongoing basis to make this data real. I want to thank Sister Melinda Kelly for her tireless commitment to the Black business community. You are a role model for a young brother like me. And I want to thank President Karen Freeman Wilson and Kametta Coleman from the Urban League as well for your championing Black businesses. So this is our final event for Black History Month. I want to invite you to visit Illinois Department of Commerce's social media. We've highlighted longstanding Black businesses and leadership from the DCEO team who have supported Black businesses throughout the month. Enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your month, enjoy the rest of your year. Have a great day. Take care.